Okay, sorry. Um, anyways, so I've drawn everything out like normal, and all I'm going to do for right now is I'm going to take my water and my brush and sort of blend this stuff out first. And I'll get some little details with the ink rather than with the charcoal. And be careful not to wash out your highlights. This is helping us get a really nice gradient. And I don't know if anybody's worked with watercolors, but it works much the same way with your layering. You're just slowly building up. And you'll want to work somewhat quickly because it dries so fast. And while you're brushing, you're still using that directional movement. Make sure you try and work on a bigger piece of paper because this brush is pretty big and it's going to be a lot easier for you to work if you work on a bigger space. This is 11 by 17. And see what I just did there is I just dipped into the water rather than smoothing anything out just to get that value in there. All right, so I have it looking about that. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to work everything up slowly until I can't work on it anymore and switch this other paper there. That's what I talked about in the And the assignment instructions were switching in and out, working on two things at once. So I got my lightest value here. We're building up gradient, so we can see those transitions. We're moving lightest to darkest. Okay, so I got all the light values I want, so I'm going to move on to my second mid-tone. See, my paper's already starting to come up a little bit. And when you're using your bamboo brush, the way you can get different line quality and different spacing is when I'm shading, I'll use the side. And then if I need broader, apply pressure down. And then when I need to do a detail or a fine line, I'll just use the tip and apply very little pressure. And then I'm going to go with my darkest. Start filling in those areas, and your darkest is very, very dark. And that's when you'll start adding little details. But you'll also remember to keep on blending everything out so you have smooth transitions. You can get some really nice hatching with your brush too. It looks really cool when you layer. It's good for texture too. Really fast motion down, really fast motion down. Now it's going to react differently in spaces that aren't dry yet, so I can tell I've already worked this as much as I can. So I'm going to switch. All right. And then I'm going to show you the other way to do it. If you don't want to do the charcoal first, I take my lightest wash and do the gestural drawing. I have that blocked out. While that's drying, I'm going to show you guys alcohol ink. You're not required to do this. This is just something fun that I like to do that works well with the ink. It might be a little pricey, but might be because of the brand I use. I use these Copic alcohol inks. They're about $6 a piece, but I've seen some at Hobby Lobby. You can get a whole little kit of like 12 colors for 20 bucks. So I just draw immediately on there, and you can move it around. You can even flip. And I'm not afraid of getting this messy because I'm going to define this later. And I mean, it's really easy to clean up. And as you build this up, the alcohol makes everything spread. It makes cool little patterns. And you want to, if you want things to mold and blend, you got to work really fast while it's wet, so it'll interact with the next layer. And if you want to be really precise, you can buy Frisket, which is a masking liquid. So what you would do before you started this is you'd get your space drawn out. You could get the whole thing drawn out, cover it with Frisket, and once it's dry, and this is dry, you can remove the layer of Frisket. You can also paint this on as well with your bamboo brush. But I like the drips and I like the pattern it makes. It's a little erratic, a little bit more spontaneous. All right, so I have that. That's still a little wet. I'm gonna switch back over here to this other one while this dries. All right. So still working up on building stuff up on my super darks. And you can get a hairdryer. I thought I had one, but I just moved a few months ago and I still haven't unpacked at all. Could not find it. All right. Then for the background, I'm going to put it in the background while some of this dries because I want to go over it with a chalk and some ballpoint pen. And you can use paintbrushes in addition to your bamboo brush. In different areas, this will be a good area for a flat brush. Remember, we want good contrast, and that's really easy to do with ink because you can get so dark. And you could make this a flat background. I kind of like texture. You can even put some drips back there, you know, make some weird shapes or patterns. So also, I'm going to go back in. Most of this is dry now. I'm going to go back in and darken some areas up because we want to push these as far as we can. And be sure you're not drawing into it while it's wet because it'll crumple the paper and you might tear through, which sucks after you've spent, you know, an hour doing something. And you can feel it because I feel that spot I just went over and I can see it start to crumple a little bit. So I'm just going to ease off, go back, start hitting things with my white chalk. And if you left the white of your paper, that's how you can get those brighter highlights. Just going straight up on top of that. Remember your radial highlights. So this is too wet to work on, so we're going to switch back to this other one here. All right, that's dry. I wouldn't recommend just doing that, by the way. I do that because I'm stupid. But you might take a little Q-tip and dab an area to see how it is. All right. So coming back, working on this dog here. If you see something you want to block out with the darker ink, just go ahead and put it in right there. Oh, see that? I just got way too heavy. So what I can do, you can grab a dish towel or a piece of toilet paper or whatever. You just dab, and that will happen to you, especially when you're working wet on wet. All right, I'm going to take a pause on that because I want to go through with a pen here in a second. So I'm going to flip back to this one. That background's dry, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a gradient. Sort of get more contrast, because we want more contrast in these drawings. Just take it where you want it to start fading. Tiny little gradient. And then go in with your ink. Oh, no, I don't want that one. Where'd my other brush go? Is that it? I swear I had another brush. Ah. That's getting super dark. I like that. I'm going to take it to the midpoint before I blend all the way through. I can start to feel that this background is taking about as much water as it's going to be able to take. So there's not much more I'm going to be able to do after that step. So just pay attention to where you're at. I'm going to just keep this little area. See, I did this little radial thing. Let's add some contrast in the background. So let's see where we're at here. So we're drying here. Another optional supply you can get is a micron, or you can get a ballpoint pen. So I'm going to go in with ballpoint pen first. And that's like that book you guys read last week. We see some great cross-hatching. Oh, but it might be too wet. Still too wet. At least right there. So go down here. Start doing some cross-hatching. and more organic lines. Even you can stipple a little bit. And directional shading with the pen, which is easier than you think it is. You can build up, just going back into it, creating layers much the same way. How are we on time? Oh, good, we're moving right along. And this is where we have some more control over our little details. I made sure to not put another cat in this week's still life because I don't want to be too predictable. So we got this really ugly dog. It's got lots of wrinkles, lots of fun reflections. Let's see, we're getting those little nuances in there. Be sure you're still paying attention to your still life here while you're drawing. And if you want to look back at that Monsters book, I highly recommend it because her drawings are just gorgeous. And any little detail you can take from that and put in your drawings, I think will make them fantastic. Oh, and see, that spot was wet. I can tamp it down a little bit, refill the paper. Just got to remind myself not to touch it. So, I mean, you guys don't have to go this fast when you're doing these. If you have a 45-minute drawing, maybe you work on it for 10 minutes, go do some laundry, go do the dishes, do something else, and then come back to it so you don't do the dumb things that I'm doing right now. So, okay, I'm not going to do the whole thing in this, but that's the ballpoint pen. The Micron, you're not going to be able to get the same like gradient, but you'll have this darker, really crisp line. So, on something like that. This is an 8. They come in all different sizes. You can get a cheap set for probably $10 at Hobby Lobby or Porch School. I use the Copic brand, and these are really good for stippling too. And it's good to alternate sizes because you'll get that line variation. But let me see, in a space where you could actually really see it. So look at how crisp and dark that line is.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So with the pen deal, can we start with that?
You know, I don't see why not. Don't do it on everyone, but at least try it on 1 or 2 for sure.
Okay, awesome.
And you don't, this is a glass box, and so when you're going in with the pen, you don't want to put that much detail in. It's the same concept as the detail on like the writing on things, because you don't want it to kind of lose its sense of realism. So once you have the little things in there, same thing, just going over. But it still gives it an added dimension. Because you can see these thick values, these thick lines, the thin lines, there's good variation in there. All right, so that's as far as we're going to push this one. I'm going to grab this other one right here. See, and this way takes so much longer, but it just depends on what you like. And there's dog hair everywhere, of course. It just depends on what you like to do. Let's see, where's my towel? I'm gonna dab. And some people love this way, and it does come out really pretty if you just strictly stick to this. But let's see here. And what I like about just using the ballpoint pen is it is very organic. You can make these great lines with it and get a lot of contrast out very quickly. And you can also shade and shadow while you're making your lines. And it's also a little bit more expressive. Like, even though that isn't necessarily tight, it's a little bit more controlled, as this is a little bit more unpredictable if you're into that sort of thing, which I am a control freak. I even have it tattooed on my wrist there. And you see all those little layers kind of plot out the points that I'm doing in the face. This dog is super ugly too. I love him. See, I almost got everything right in that background, but not quite. And the thing is, you can just come back in. And it does expand, so make sure you're not doing it right at the line, just a few centimeters above. And you can blend it back in by moving it. And then you would take this as a base, and be careful, the microns won't blend with the water because they're a different base, but your Bic pens will. Oh, we got somebody else in there. But your Bic pens will blend with the water just a little bit. So I'll show you what that looks like here. It's ever so slightly so you can get a little gradient. And then you would work it much the same as your other one there by building up again, little by little. But see, this way is a lot more, you know, expressive, maybe is the word. But both are good ways, and if you can figure out a way to do both at the same time, I do it. It's all about experimentation, and that's what's really important about those homework drawings, is that you're experimenting with all your materials so you can have a better idea about how it will react. That way, when you spend, you know, an hour or more on your final drawings, you don't mess up at the very last moment and then have nothing. You can also work into the ink to create like, you know, something like this. This just has a foreground and a background. You could go in with your wash and build up something back here to push that color back and establish a middle ground. You can even come in with the charcoal to do that as well. I think the biggest takeaway is to allow yourself time for these things to dry and not be in a huge rush. Because this is very time intensive. See, so that pushes that back. Okay. So let's see if there was anything else to do to this. We did the pen. Add a little bit more highlights. Also, if you want to keep pushing and make it a little easier to work on these, spray them with the fixative after you've gotten to a point like somewhere like this, and then work on top. I also like, you see I just went over that line, but it creates this really nice gray. And you can start grayscaling or whatever you want to do to push these, but just take your time. Try and figure out what works for you. Do you even want to mess with the pens? Do you want to add color? Just really experiment with those with that 3 hours of ink drawing. Okay, so questions, concerns, what's up? Nobody?
I have one. Do we have to do a fabric this week?
No, you don't have to. You can if you want. Anybody else? Oh, wait, it looks like we have a chat question here. How do you prevent everything from getting super muddy since you can't erase? Leaving yourself plenty of the natural paper in the planning process and when you're putting stuff down, waiting for things to dry so things don't blend into everything else while you're working on them. So work simultaneously, have at least 2 going at one time. Be patient and make sure everything dries. That's probably the biggest thing. And if you do get too muddy, like, is this all the way dry yet? No, let's dry here. We can mess with. Maybe in here. So what you can do is you can sort of like erase things with this white chalk by just going over what you have here. And that'll lighten it back up. Spray it with a fixative, work on top of that. Did that answer your question, Oliver? Okay. And then from Jaylene, is it okay to start with a base of charcoal of your objects first, then go back and use the ink to create the line art? Yeah, if you missed the first few minutes of the demo, we started this one by starting with charcoal as the base and actually using the water to mix the charcoal and then working on top of that. And then this one, we started with the ink as the base. How do you dilute the ink? Yeah, just with water, with different amounts of water. I got these little ramekins here. You can use your paper cups or whatever. This is easier for me to keep track of because I can see it visually in my head. And you could even have like 6 or 7 of these in different values. You could have your entire value scale. You could even just have the pure ink and dilute it with the water. Your water does get mixed, like way muddy that way, way faster. But yeah, just with water. How many objects do I suggest you guys draw? At least 3. The reason I say that is because there's like this power in 3s. Everything looks a little bit better in the triangular composition. 1 is too simplistic. So I would say at least 3. Odd numbers always work better than even numbers too. So keep that in your mind. Is this another question? Okay, anybody else? Well, if that's it, I'll get off here. Let me take everybody's name that was here right fast, and I will give you guys 5 extra points. We got Angela Brand.
I actually have a real quick question. I did send it, but I didn't send it in time, I guess. You did the alcohol ink one with a direct focus of the dog. Can we do something like that?
Yeah. If you want to do, if you want to pick one of these more complicated things to do, like alcohol ink with a singular subject, that's totally fine because you're dealing with an added challenge. So that's okay. Fine.
Was that all alcohol ink?
The background was alcohol ink, and then I used the India ink for the dog.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Angela Brand, Chloe R, Jaylene, Lauren, and Oliver. All right, I got you guys all. If you do have any questions, just email me and get started. Thanks for coming, guys.